I have a lot of passion for startups. I've had my own companies in the past. I love coming up, working with people and having this really good concept and idea, then bringing it to life, right? So at the end of the day, you bring it to life, and then the satisfaction comes in that first year or so when you get 5 to 10 people adopt the concept and say, okay, I'll trust you, you crazy person. I'll trust you with our money, and you go do this, and then you succeed with that. And then scaling becomes something more of a, at least for me, much more of a natural rite of passage. A lot of people get hooked on what their solution will do, not what it will do to help or solve a problem for the customer. If you can't figure out what the problem you're solving, then you're selling to the wrong person. From an overall perspective, Cynthia, I think for the next 4 or 5 years, it's going to be the biggest contributor to people's success, one way or the other, over the next 4 years. It's funny. My wife has embraced AI. Honestly, she does a lot of work for marketing for speakers and building up portfolios, all this stuff.
Welcome everyone to the VSERVE Ebusiness Podcast on supply chain management, where we invite some of industry's great experts to share their experiences and gather some helpful tips along the way. And today we are exploring the intersection of, high growth SaaS and the physical security of the global supply chain with a leader who has mastered the art of scaling technology companies, right? So joining us today is Bart Schulman. Bart, it's so good to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Cynthia, for the invite. I look forward to the conversation today, and it's a pleasure to talk a bit about both security and obviously SaaS and scaling, which is a few things that are near and dear to my heart.
Perfect, and that's what we're looking for, right? So, Bart, you're currently the Chief Commercial Officer at Victoria Risk Management. You have, a visionary in terms of GTM marketing, right? The architect of the whole thing with over, I think it's 20 years of experience, scaling B2B and enterprise technology companies, and the whole driving revenue from zero to that 100 million ARR is what I've read a lot about you. But I would love to start from the beginning. How did you end up here? What drove you to join this, industry? And, how have you navigated through the Fortune 500 enterprises landscape all these years? So over to you.
Yeah, great question. Very big question. So I'll try not to ramble on too long about my history. It is a little bit interesting because of my path, I would say. I graduated from college with a degree in accounting. So that was a start of which I didn't become very interested in that process of joining a large firm and doing audit work. It just looked like not the right thing for Bart Schulman, to be honest with you. So anyway, long story short, my personality didn't fit that, but the background was helpful to understand kind of, how to manage from an accounting perspective, how to understand, debits and credits and simple things associated with running a business, right? So that was an important foundation for me. I joke about never being an accountant, but it was an important foundation. From there, I kind of bumped around in some sales roles and ran national service business for a large equipment company out of college. That's where I ended up kind of starting my career. Then got into software very early days for software in the late 90s, early 2000s with Great Plains and moving into SAP. And again, similar story, right? It was helpful to have an accounting degree, but it didn't excite me every day to go out and sell the CFOs. It was just wasn't my cup of tea, let's be honest. So ended up migrating more towards the supply chain space in general. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, really focused in on the logistics side of the business, and then logistics and security. So the journey's kind of been a circuitous one, but always involved selling to and engaging with enterprises from small to medium all the way up to the largest enterprises in the world. And I always kind of crave those difficult situations and problems that people would bring me, and then finding a solution. That's really the core of what I'm about. I think is persistence and curiosity and passion. So I have a ton of curiosity to learn, I have a ton of passion about that, and I like to work with people to come up with solutions.
Yeah, and that is so amazing. And I always hear, I've done like so many podcasts now, like 20 plus. And it's fascinating to hear how you guys started somewhere else and ended up somewhere else, the whole journey. And the word that comes up most often is curiosity. So I love that. I love that. And I do want to kind of segue into, because I want to hear a lot about this 0 to 100 million roadmap. What's that all about? What's the how did that come up? What's that all about? I want to hear more about that.
Well, for me, I have a lot of passion for startups. I've had my own companies in the past. I love coming up, working with people, and having this really good concept and idea, then bringing it to life, right? So at the end of the day, you bring it to life, and then the satisfaction comes in that first year or so when you get 5 to 10 people adopt the concept and say, okay, I'll trust you, you crazy person. I'll trust you with our money, and you go do this. And then you succeed with that. And then scaling becomes something more of a, at least for me, much more of a natural rite of passage once you get past year one. So year one is a really, really hard year. But for some reason, I really love that process of really engaging, whether we're truly at 0 or under 10 or wherever. And we're trying to get to that next level where we're like kind of a real company, not just an apple in the owner's eye. So I think that part's exciting, but then the scale and the fun comes because now you get to really build your team. You really get to foster some folks into roles that they're, maybe not quite ready for, but you can help groom them and grow them. That's the exciting part for me as well, is bringing people on the team, teaching them, helping them grow. Because what I want to do is find a lot smarter people than I am, put them around me so they can give me great ideas that I can then help execute on. I'm good at making decisions, so that's really strength. But at the end of the day, it's really about how do I help people grow and make them successful.
Yeah, perfect. So that's so when we're looking at from, I guess, a SaaS point of view, right? Especially when we're looking at logistical companies, the traditional logistical company, they have a lot. I'm pretty sure they take a lot of convincing when it comes to technical hurdles, right? Like moving from their traditional ways to SaaS. So how do you, use, I think there was a model you were talking about, but how do you work through those when you're going from traditional to SaaS now?
The fascinating thing about what we do is, we sell to a wide range of customers in a very verticalized manner. I don't know how better way to say
I understand. Yeah.
I'm selling, we're selling to, folks in the industry that do, whether it's the Kuehne+Nagels, DSVs, those kind of large logistics companies, JB Hunt's, Schneider, you can name, all the ones down the line. We're selling to them realistically to help them sell their services to others. And what I mean by that is what we offer to them is a way in which to go to market that can help them differentiate from their competitors, as we serve as kind of a almost a security blanket for them. So that's what we're in business. But then on the other side of our business, we'll sell directly to electronics manufacturers as well, whether that's Asus, that's Apple, whoever, hopefully all these folks come aboard to Vectura, but that's the other side of our business. So it's really two different ways we go to market. And you asked specifically about the logistics side. So realistically, what we do there is really focus in on, hey, you want to start moving shipments for XYZ company that are over $500,000. Let's just put a line in the sand. Great. What are you approaching them with? How are you going to protect their card? Let us build a program with you that helps you go to market and feel comfortable that you're going to give them the service that they need and deserve at a price point that's reasonable as well, right? So it's a push-pull in those situations. And once we get buy-in on that level, then it's about hey, okay, how many of these can we go out and help you sell to your customers so that your volume will increase? We should, our ROI should be in the savings that they're going to receive from not having theft, but it's also the additional revenue they can gain from having a true program in place that's going to give the customer confidence to go with them. Maybe even a slightly higher.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So when you're using that to build the ideal customer profile, right, the ICP, how do you secure those contracts? Like, how do you make sure that when the product is still in development stage, or when you're moving through the platform and the product is still not fully launched, how do you build that customer profile from there?
I think understanding the customer profile is that there's two things that are critical, especially early days in your business. Number one is understanding your ICP, which you just mentioned, which is hugely critical, right? Selling to the wrong people for a long time becomes a huge waste of time. And in the early days, you're so desperate to talk to anybody, you get sucked into the idea. Oh, Joe over here, the janitor, was really interested in what we had to say. Well, I want to talk to anybody about it, so I'm going to go talk to Joe. So that's a struggle that most people run into, and it's not unusual. I think understanding the ICP, but also understanding the discovery process. A lot of people get hooked on what their solution will do, not what it will do to help or solve a problem for the customer. If you can't figure out what the problem you're solving, then you're selling to the wrong person. So if I can identify in a conversation, and again, if I'm too worried about telling them all the great things the product's going to do for them, telling them all about the glitz and glamour and the sizzle and everything else, which we as sellers and owners and all these other positions, we're excited about what we're offering, which is a good thing. But at the end of the day, that excitement translates into a bad sales cycle because we haven't taken the time to listen more than we talk. You know, Cynthia, you're doing a great job on this podcast of making me and that's a good thing. In my world, it's the same situation with customers. If we're able to let them unleash and say, here's where my problems exist, so we don't waste their time either. Hey, we can solve that for you. You know, you're having problems with keeping people, you know, it's not our specialty. So let me, you know, but if you have this problem, we can probably help you with it. So I think that's really the key to the whole game, is understanding in that discovery process what problems we're going to solve, how we can actually help the customer efficiently. Then the sales process becomes quite easy.
Exactly. And I completely agree with you that, like, I've been doing sales for the past 10 plus years now. And obviously selling anything doesn't work. It's understanding the problem. So, and I was reading, stuff from your profile. There was one about when you were at Ansera and you had built a GTM team that had reached about 1 million ARR in 10 months. I would love to hear more about that. Like, how did that happen? Give us a little backstory on that.
So Ansera was a change, right? I got an opportunity to work with a company that was outside of logistics and supply chain space. And I took it as a challenge because I saw the risk mitigation piece, which I could translate for my current world today. We started with literally zero, and the product was in development. So we actually ended up in about 2 million total that year. But it was a real struggle. It was a different sales motion for me, right? I was selling to veterinarians and food safety folks, which were not inside my bailiwick of normal people that I would talk to. But I think what we were able to do is really what I just talked about, was in the discovery process, we were able to bake out the product a little more so that it actually met needs of that customer. Like we had the kernel of the product, wasn't quite there yet. So by really digging in with customers, doing a lot of face-to-face meetings. I mean, the other thing I think that's super critical when you're a small business and you're trying to grow is your name doesn't mean anything. Vectura's on my shirt, but it's not IBM, it's not Oracle. You know, no one's going to just magically open the door. If I say, hey, I'm coming over, I'm going to be in town this week from Vectura. Do you mind if I stop by? I don't know who you are, what you're talking about. So when we get somebody's attention, we need to take that opportunity to really sell ourselves in a way that gives them confidence, because everybody that buys from a company, no matter what size of the company is taking a risk. So how do you mitigate that risk with the potential success they're going to have with your product? you have to build a trusting relationship, and people buy an emotion. I mean, nobody, you can lie to yourself as much as you want to lie to yourself. Nobody just flat out lies on the numbers. I guess procurement people technically do, but before it gets to procurement, you've got to get there to have that conversation. That last conversation sometimes is a little difficult because it's not emotional anymore. It's all just analytical.
Yeah.
I think in order to get there, you got to build those relationships. So I think that's the key. So with Antera, I was in chicken farms and all over the place, meeting people, trying to spread the word. And it was enjoyable. I had a lot of fun because it was different. And I learned a great deal, good and bad. So that's, every experience offers.
Exactly. That. Yeah. I love to talk about like relationship building, how that whole process works, and, what you do in that process. I love all that, but I do want to, to also talk about a lot of other things like cargo security. I know there's like a big part of your perspective that you have put in terms of tracking versus protection, and how the market has been pretty much overpromised, and underserved by the whole traditional GPS only solution. So I want to know a little bit more about that. What's your perspective on that whole thing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and from a commentary perspective, I think there's a couple of things. There's been a lot of publicity recently about cargo theft, whether it's because Guy Fieri got his vodka stolen, whether it's Nestle had candy bars stolen that were specific. Yeah, I mean, it's all over the board. But what people don't realize, this has been going on for a very, very long time. And a lot of folks went through a period of time where they said, okay, we're going to put IoT devices and GPS trackers in here. And blah, blah, blah. That's great. That's a good starting point, right? So what happens if something happens, right? So the alert's great. Okay, I had somebody stop, a driver stop in a red zone, and what's going on? What do I do? So it starts by understanding visibility and where the vehicle is or where the cargo is. Important differentiation there. A lot of people talk about visibility, and they'll talk about tracking the actual truck or motor unit that's actually moving the cargo. That's not visibility to the cargo, because you're not assured that those two things are together at that point, right? It could be the wrong trailer, it could be the wrong, whatever the case may be. So we focus heavily on monitoring the actual cargo and the trailer itself. We also believe in customers are getting alert fatigue, right? I'm getting all these alerts, and it's shooting off emails to me in the middle of the night, and I'm looking at it, I can't cipher anything out of it. I think the big problem that Vectura helps solve specifically is by monitoring those and then interdicting when there's a problem. What I mean by that is we'll go all the way to organizing, a police response immediately in situations that warrant it. But, interacting with a driver, understanding if it's something suspicious. Some things are completely innocent, but being trained to monitor and talk to somebody and understand, well, this doesn't sound right or it does sound right, is a big part of it. The starting point is knowing where it is. But if something happens, what are you going to do? Everybody has a plan of what, this truck's supposed to go from California to Chicago. Great. Okay, it's on its way. Well, hold on. It went up to North Dakota and just stopped. What do you do? What's your next step? How do you handle that? Why did it get all the way to North Dakota? Why didn't you stop it sooner? On and on and on. And I'm using just the U.S. in this example, but that translates to across the globe in the different parameters with different places as well. But to me, the real thing is, how can I action? And then before that, how do I prevent? So how do I put the cargo in the safest situation possible by having as much knowledge and information before it actually leaves the dock? 60% roughly of cargo is stolen before it actually leaves the dock. It's a false driver, false information, false bill of lading, whatever the case may be. There's something that's being done that's allowing that theft to start right at that point. And it's the most vulnerable, because everybody wants their product. Everyone wants their product fast. So it's much easier to go, oh, that guy showed up instead of this guy. Okay, just load him. I'm sure I'll get it from point A to point B. And then you load them, and all of a sudden the inventory never shows up, right? So our job is really starting there. and going beyond. But visibility is a great thing to have from an on-time delivery. All that kind of stuff is great. But if you really want a security layer, it's a matter of layering on verification, all the things in front, and then the monitoring piece, which allows us to action on the alerts that we have in place. And we're professionals at that. That's what we do.
And how has AI helped in all of this? Well, now in the age of AI, has it helped? Has it contributed to more problems? How is that whole process working?
Both sides. That's a great way to put it. Continue to work problems is a great way to put it, right? So AI has allowed criminals to get more creative, right? So that's one thing on their side. So falsifying voices, all these other things that come into play. Being able to easily falsify documentation because you can go on and put it in an AI and say, can you repeat that? All those things are much easier than they were before. But on the positive side, we're utilizing AI now to cipher those alerts so that they're triaged before we triage them in a monitoring location. And the importance for that is, as we scale in particular, from a modeling standpoint, it would normally take you scaling, monitoring people at that same rate, right? I've got to scale. So my cost structure goes up tremendously and my risk goes up tremendously as an operator of that current. But as we get more data and we get more AI interfaces, number one, we're going to get more legitimate, good information that we can start to action on because it's already been triaged with AI. But more importantly, we can upscale the people in the organization doing the monitoring because now they're just reacting when there's really a problem associated with it and they have to go address it, right? So it takes fewer people, but also it's going to take better people because, hey, the AI has determined we have a problem. Okay, now we got to go solve it, So the speed at which we can react should also be better. And our ability to make our decision-making should also be increased, not because of AI specifically, because of the distillation of information that AI is going to do on our behalf in order to give us the right information to go action.
Wow. And that's so fascinating to hear. Have you in recent projects actually started using AI to support these, companies, or is it more like in the near future that you guys are seeing that?
We have it in place now, so we're starting to gauge kind of how it's working. We also used AI in some of our order building technology. So we're trying to find better ways to make the job of the customer easier to get, the shipment started and other things. So we'll continue to push forward. And I think over the next 6 months, we'll add different little agents and pieces that make sense. And then we'll continue to build large data model out of the information we have in order to better do response and monitor.
Wow. That's really fascinating to hear. So I'm looking forward to what all AI can do to help rather than, support the other way. Now, I was going through a lot of your material. There was an HDA seminar, I believe, where you discussed all about this and also about the hand carry strategy. So I read about it, but I want to know a little bit more, like how does that whole process work? How does it help to, get from that standard secure transport to requiring a dedicated human escort? Like, how does that whole process work?
We entered it. So a part of our business model is physical cargo escorts. So these are traditionally ex-law enforcement, ex-military folks that work with us across the country. We have about 150 different folks that do this for us. And what they do is essentially if a truck has a value that is deemed to be high in the customer's perspective, that could be 2 million, it could be 5 million, it could be 25 million. We'll actually have a car with 2 people in it that are monitoring that activity and driving coast to coast, whatever the case may be, with behind that truck. So if the truck stops, they stop. If with eyes on that truck always. It's probably the most secure thing you can do, but it's very expensive. There's 2 sides to that. Well, along with that, the natural progression for us was, hey, we've got all these ex-law enforcement guys, we've got all these ex-military folks. How can we utilize them in some other ways? I mean, it was a decision and anything else. And then we got some questions from people, whether it was, we've talked to some folks that supply donor organs and, from that to Rolex watches to Tiffany jewelry. It's all over the place. But hey, I need you to ride with this package. It might be 200 miles in a car. It might be on a private jet. It might be, and I need you to keep custody of that item from point A to point B until you hand it off to whoever the new owner of this is in a safe location, and you can move forward. It's something, quite frankly, if you would ask me about a year ago, I didn't know hardly anything about it. So it's been a big learning curve. Talking to lots of folks about it. It's not like the football that the president's guy carries around with a hand. It's a little more subtle than that. But what we're using is technology to help manage, so that we can confirm that package is still with that person that entire time by monitoring both the person and the package. So we know they're together all the time. And also, because of our monitoring capability, the person has the ability to call in and say, hey, I'm in trouble. How do we help? So we've got a lot of safeguards around it. So it's a new program we started recently. So it seems to be hitting the ground running, which is a good thing. We've had lots of inquiries from our presentation at the HDA PCSC conference. It was, I didn't think much of presenting. It was, I'm not that uncomfortable on stage, shockingly, but it was really interesting. It was a topic I'm not super, I'm still not super. There's other people much more knowledgeable, and I'm learning. But what was great was the questions we got and the intrigue. So it clearly was a topic people were interested in. So we're looking forward to it being a big part of our business going forward.
Wow, that sounds so fascinating. And to kind of bring that kind of thing in the world of AI now, most people would be like, there are other ways, but this kind of seems like the most appropriate and the most safest way, because humans trust human, especially when it's a bigger revenue to deal with. So I completely understand. And I really enjoyed that conference and the whole thing, and to learn more about that. And I'm pretty sure there's so many layers to it. Like you've said, there's cargo security. There is the intelligence aspect of it, this regional intelligence aspect of it. I have so many more questions, but I'm going to skip over that because I know we are running out of time. So I'm going to go more and talk more about your role as a strategic advisor in the auto scheduler AI. How do you see, I'm talking a lot about AI, but it's like the biggest topic right now, especially when it comes to warehouse.
No, it's huge.
Especially in warehousing, and the way it's been impacting the way companies are doing their in-transit, risk assessments and stuff like that. How do you see it playing out for you?
So I think there's a couple of things. I think AI has changed it's somewhere like 10% of our GDP or something crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
So the money's there. There's a huge amount of whether it's server racks being sent to data centers from a logistics standpoint, it's absolutely crazy. What auto scheduler is a friend of mine. So Tom Moore are dear friends for a long time. They've been in the supply chain space for a long, long time. And Keith has a product now with AutoSchedule. It's really built for warehousing, and the AI piece is really how he's got agents that he's built out and so forth for different kinds of things. But what he's really mastered is this whole idea of ins and outs and understanding when you need people, when you don't need people, and how that labor component can change dramatically the profitability of a warehouse, right? So if I can cut down my labor by 75% or something like that, or 25% or 5%, whatever. Number one, it's the thing to do is fill jobs in a warehouse. It's a very, very difficult role to fill, and especially with good people. So if I can get that number down to the right amount, you're really successful. AI from an overall perspective, Cynthia, I think for the next 4 or 5 years, it's going to be the biggest contributor to people's success, one way or the other, over the next 4 years. It's funny. My wife has embraced AI. She does a lot of work for marketing for speakers and building up portfolios, all this stuff. She's not utilizing it to write, but utilizing it to help spark ideas and do things and clean things up more than anything else. So that's one aspect. But just the amount of computing power that it's going to require and the amount of infrastructure, we're changing one way or the other. It's coming.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some winners and losers. It's inevitable. I mean, there's going to be some winners and losers. And I always tell people, I've got older brothers and sisters, and I'm like, look, you guys got to embrace this a little bit, right? I'm more of a pen and paper guy because it's just the way I remember. But I've started to use the Claudes of the world and all of the stuff that I can get my hands on, because it really helps me generate questions, content, ideas. Vectura is a small company. I'm coming back to Vectura, and we don't have 35 people in marketing. So my marketing team is very, very astute at turning things around quickly. And some of the cheat code is realistically using some AI capabilities to do that. Now, again, you see people that just slap AI stuff or AI slop all over the place. We don't do that, fortunately, because they're smart enough not to do it. But there's an impact there, and you got to find the happy medium of where it fits. And I think it is a huge part of where everything's going.
Yeah, and it's normal now. It's almost like as if it's normal. It's been here forever. So I know we're running out of time, but there's this one question I always ask everybody who comes to the show, which is like my last question to you, is what's your advice to the future generation that's moving into this kind of industry, supply chain? What are like the top things they should look at their reality and be like, okay, I need to work on this?
One of the things I'm terrible at is patience. So I'm not good at patience. I would tell others to be better than I am. But a lot of ways, also how I've been successful, right, is I just continue to push. I think I always come back to, I'm working, I coached baseball for years, and a couple of the guys I coach for are now out of college and want to start his own business. So I'm really excited for him, but he calls me periodically and we talk about some things, what he should do next and everything else. And what I told him is that, and I'll tell anybody, look, there's people in this logistics business that have true passion about it, and they're the ones that are successful. And you got to learn on your way up, right? You got to take your hard knocks. I mean, it's not an easy world to be in. But it's never going to be boring. And for a long time now, we're going to have to start. Nothing's going to beam from place to place. So we're going to have it on a truck. We're going to have it on a train. It's going to go on a plane, whatever the case may be, to get from point A to point B. So, some of those things will change, obviously, with electric self-driving trucks, and sometime in the future, all those kind of things will change. But they're still you're going to have to figure out what loads go where, how it gets loaded. All those things are still out there. So this is a very, very big industry, much bigger than people understand. And also, no matter what you do, I don't care what it is, find passion, find creativity, find a way to solve problems, and you'll never not have a job, and it'll always be enjoyable for you. Even on those tough days, it'll still be enjoyable. You just figure out how to go in every day, and if I can solve a problem today, I'm going to be successful, and know that, as long as you have passion and curiosity, you're going to solve these problems.
Wow, that's perfect. Passion and curiosity. So that's the two words I always take out from most of my podcasts. And Bart, it was so great to have you here sharing all those insights. I know we're a little low on time, but it's just so much to learn in terms of technology, AI, GTM strategies that you've built on, for so many years. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming in. Any closing thoughts before we actually close the podcast?
Well, I appreciate the time, Cynthia, and you've been a fantastic host. I think you do a really good job of allowing a loudmouth like me to talk a little bit. So that's a good thing.
Well, we love you guys. We love you guys.
Hopefully you get something out of it. And but I think it's critical to continue to spread the word on the things like this. And I'm always willing to talk to folks. And, I'm pretty much an open book. I mean, I don't think I've done anything spectacularly crazy or inventive. I just think it's about figuring out your path and not relenting until you get there. So I appreciate the time, Cynthia. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Bart. It was great having you here, and you have a good day.